We have a great conversation for you all to take in. This is a conversation with Jeanelle Teves. She's a Chief Commercial Officer at Bugaboo, and she's going to be speaking with Eddie Patzsch, who's the VP of Revenue at Optimove, about the concept of keeping a conversation and a connection going with your customers 365 days a year. Having this conversation with Bugaboo, I think, is particularly relevant because this is a product or set of products that you think people buy once and then they don't need to necessarily keep buying more, and you're going to hear how they have found a way to kind of keep that dialogue and keep their customers engaged year-round. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Eddie and Jeanelle.
So as you enjoy your morning breakfast, we're going to be speaking on a few different topics today. First off, my name is Eddie, as Scott mentioned, VP of Revenue at Optimove. We, at Optimove, just real quick, we help brands build longer, deeper, longer lasting relationships with their customers. We've got about 1,200 customers globally. We just made our 5th acquisition and a lot of new product on the way. And sitting here with me is Jeanelle Teves, Chief Commercial Officer for Bugaboo North America. So she leads the US and Canadian growth for the award-winning Dutch stroller. And then previous to Bugaboo, Jeanelle was at Nike. So she has a wealth of experience across 2 global brands that I'm looking forward to digging into. So first question for you, I wanted to talk a little bit about the transition between Bugaboo and Nike. So just kind of high level, what surprised you most about stepping into the category that you're in today?
Yeah, so I frequently say I went from selling sneakers to strollers, and I thought that was going to be a smooth transition, but it was definitely a learning curve. Let me start with the internal learnings. So coming from a huge global Fortune 500 company like Nike and then moving into a growth company like Bugaboo, it came with its own set of vocabulary and internal cultural norms and ways of working. I also joined in 2021, so I went through the entire recruitment process without having met anyone because no one was meeting in person, so that was wild. Day one, I was like, well, I hope I made the right decision here. But I felt a calling to the brand. For all of you who may not know Bugaboo, maybe some of the people in the room are parents. It's a Dutch design company best known for our award-winning strollers. And I consider it the perfect intersection of where I was personally, which I was a new mom myself to a newborn, and then where I was professionally, which was in this general management pipeline. And it was this opportunity to join a rapidly growing brand that had very strong roots in Europe, but scaling in North America. So from a career perspective, that sounded like a really interesting challenge and story I wanted to be a part of. So that's a little bit around the internal. Externally, our consumer mindset was completely different. If you consider Nike, how many in the room are runners or you wear sneakers outside of being in conferences like this? You buy sneakers, yeah, a lot of hands here. You buy sneakers what, maybe once a quarter, or if you are a sneakerhead like my brother, once a week. But that buying pattern is very different than a $1,500 stroller that you are making when you are a new parent. And that was a learning curve for me, and I'll get more into that. But we went from impulse buying to very long research and research timeline, and really when I joined, it was a singular purchase. And we've since extended and expanded that by having repeat customers, which was a trial and error process over the last 4 years. So
yeah, I'm sure. So that how do you define loyalty different for people that are buying once or twice a year versus I guess potentially 52 times a year?
Yeah, so I'll give case study A and then case study B. So case study A, when I was at Nike, you can look at things like brand metric surveys, right? And you can find out one thing that we were constantly looking at was our ranking amongst teens. So were we the #1 sports sports bra brand amongst teen girls. So you run these surveys. So that's case study A. Case study B, now that I'm at Bugaboo, we also use brand engagement surveys as a way to see how we're ranking in terms of the consideration set. We're also looking at things like registry. So this gives you an indication of leading indicators of how many people have the intent to buy, which is a unique metric in the baby industry, but it's one that we are able to gauge, okay, if we have this many registry ads in July, are we in July? We're in June, see, I don't even know what month it is. We have this many register ads in June. Here's what I think my business is going to be in 4 months when people start converting and making those purchases.
So that falls into what you had mentioned around the sales targets, but that falls into kind of the lagging data that you would look at?
Yeah, I like to look at lagging data, so historical data, which is current sell-through on D2C channels like .com and Amazon. And then also your retail inventory, how much are you selling into retail? And then you have things like leading indicators, which are traffic and registry ads, which give you an indication. Because we have some parents here, we know that on average, the consideration phase is about 8 weeks long, and then they tend to make the purchase around their 4th or 5th month of pregnancy. So traffic is a really good indication. People are researching, they're gathering information, they're deciding what stroller or what car seat to buy, and then plus 8 weeks later, then they're gonna finally make that purchase once they've narrowed down their top 1 or 2 brands.
And is there a particular SKU that represents kind of the gateway to a second purchase or a second SKU, like additional product lines? Do they start normally with the stroller?
Yeah, so there are 2 critical items for purchase, and it's been in the news a lot lately, just given the global tariff shifts, right? So car seats and strollers are the 2 most important items that any new parent purchases. Those are products that we import outside of the United States. That's where the journey begins. You cannot go home from the hospital in North America without a car seat, without baby in the car seat. So it always begins with a car seat and a newborn stroller. Our adjacent categories are the extras. They're the nice to haves. They are a travel stroller number 2 that's lighter and folds really quickly. They are the foot muff if you live in New York City or Boston, or I don't know if anyone traveled in from out of town, but here it gets really cold. So our foot muff or our cozy sleeping bag business does very well during colder months. So we have a lot of adjacent categories and accessories that we serve the consumer with. So you can think of it as like your iPhone, right? You have your iPhone, you need your iPhone, this is your critical thing, but then maybe you get a case, and then maybe you get chargers, and then maybe you get an iPad to work off of a bigger screen. So that's the metaphor that I like to use with our business. Our iPhone is the newborn stroller in the car seat, and then everything else is a nice to have. So we try and create this ecosystem that they choose Bugaboo accessories to complement the Bugaboo stroller.
Very cool. My daughter was born July 1st in Chicago, and
Hot.
yeah, being a new dad, I was a little worried about setting up the car seat, so we walked home from the hospital.
Yeah, no, I relate with that. I had my son just down the street on Mount Sinai on 59th Street, and I live in the Upper West Side, and yeah, I did not, absolutely not, but my husband walked him the 30 some odd blocks home.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. So yeah, I want to go back to some of the themes here around keeping the consumer relationships warm,
Yep.
Particularly in a long buying cycle, but even in between these product drops. So if we could kind of start there, how do you make it feel more like a conversation, less of a campaign for some of that evergreen content that you're putting out?
Yeah, good question. So let me give a little bit of the context. Strollers are like cars. Another metaphor that I like to use with my team. Strollers are like cars, and we release a new model once or twice a year, maximum. So new innovation comes once or twice a year. So that's 2 weeks of product launch campaign content that we have. Well, there are 50 other weeks of the year that we have to say something, because only 2 weeks of the year we're talking about new innovation. So one of the challenges that we've had from a marketing perspective is outside of those 2 weeks of product drops, how do we have valuable, useful, educational content the other 50 weeks of the year? So that has been a reframe on how our internal team has worked and collaborated to fill in the gaps. And we've also found a way from an innovation and engineering standpoint to have smaller drops, but I can get more into that. But maybe to answer the question directly, I really love this notion of the positionless marketer that you talk about at Optimove, because our interpretation of that is we have broken down the walls and silos between departments. So in order to figure out what are we going to talk about those other 50 weeks of the year, that is not going to come from one brain. That is not going to come only from the marketing brain. So now my customer service team and my marketing team and my sales team have a cross-functional meeting once a week where we are asking customer service, what are the top 5 questions you're getting calls about? What are the top 5 DMs that our social service team is hearing? And we're using those themes to fuel our content calendar so that we are not putting out content that is internal brainstorming, but it's informed by outside parents who are saying, I don't know how to install the car seat. I'm having a daughter in July. I have no idea how to install this car seat, and your PDP imagery is not doing it. So that informs our social media team. We need to create a piece of content about how to simply install a car seat, and we need to do that 5 different ways. We need to do that in a small car. We need to do that in an SUV. We need to have a mom doing it. We need to have a grandma doing it. We need to have a father doing it. And so that has been a big breakthrough. It sounds so simple, but using service to inform your marketing has been an unlock for us. And by the way, it's just an unlimited flow of ideas, because every week is different in terms of what consumers are calling in about.
What does that information, knowledge passing look like? Are there specific meetings around that listening and being able to listen? What's the process to get that information up to you?
So a lot of people in this room you're all operators, right? And I would invite you to think about your weekly sales review or your weekly business review. Typically, that's the buyers or your VP of sales doing a run through of here's how business is, here's how we're tracking a budget. Now I have my customer service team who used to be on an island entering that meeting and listening to, okay, here's what's happening from a marketplace perspective. Once sales is done, then we have our service team saying, we've gotten 250 calls and 36 DMs. These are the top 5 things that people are coming to us for. And we're also tired of answering the same question 26 times a day. So that has then informed the marketing team, who are also at the table. So in essence, it's a cross-functional meeting where everyone is hearing around the table what is happening in different departments, and we're coming up with a set of action items that are cross-functional. And then, by the way, because one of my other favorite sayings is there's no such thing as $1 million idea, but $1 million execution. These are the action items that we have to revisit the next Wednesday at the top of the meeting. Okay, we said that we are going to create 5 pieces of content. Let's see what that content looks like. X, Y, and Z was down. How is this responded? Hey, customer service, are you still getting questions about topic X, Y, and Z? And so it's a more collaborative type of meeting. Mm-hmm. And it's also been eye-opening for every function to see what each other is dealing with.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then so those meetings also help you produce that consistent messaging across all whatever different channels and teams are putting out.
Yeah, and I'll go back to this idea of positionless marketing.
I love that you're bringing up positionless. I wasn't even planning to bring that up.
Of course, when we had to when we were sitting down and talking about it, I know this is a theme that you at Optimove talk about often, but I think actually what it is inviting people to move from being very vertical specialists and collecting experiences beyond your vertical, which I think from a career perspective, I always tell the junior people on my team, if you want to be a phenomenal marketer, you're going to be a better marketer if you understand the language from the sales team. And from the sales team, you're going to be a better account manager if you can speak with a service mindset. And so it's less about, oh, I'm Jeanelle and I'm the brand director. It is, I am thinking in a much longer lead time way on the unified goal, and in order to be a great marketer, I want to make sure that I'm servicing my sales team, I'm servicing my service team, I'm plugged into operations, and that ultimately I think is a positionless marketer, positionless salesperson. You're collecting broader experiences outside of your niche.
Yeah, yeah. The way we've been talking about positionless is if you imagine the old way of doing things with a conveyor belt, or maybe some people think about the I Love Lucy episode where the chocolates are going down, up and down the conveyor belt. And so we look at a modern marketing team today, or a modern business stack today, and it takes a long time to get all this information surfaced, get the information to the design team to recreate the product, and you basically, what we're seeing is that we're seeing campaigns go from something like 28 days to 6 hours.
Yeah.
So just being able to streamline that, where everybody has a role, it's their own role, but they're getting outside of their comfort zone, outside their typical day-to-day.
Right.
So thanks for bringing up positionless. If you stop by our booth, that's what it says there. And then I am curious, just within the mix, what's a small touch point that has had a surprisingly big impact on LTV? So if you're extracting some of the touch points that are coming out of that work, is there anything that stands out as an example?
So what works within our industry, I suspect, could look different in other industries, but I think it always starts with what is your consumer journey? What is the consumer decision journey? And at Bugaboo, we took a look at this data, and in North America, social media indexes the second highest in terms of where consumers are coming to learn about us. And I say North America because Bugaboo is a global brand that trades in over 50 countries. And if you double click into Germany, for example, friends and family comes much higher than it does here in America. We trust our influencers more than what our sister is pushing. But social media ranks very high. So organic social is an area that we've really spent a lot of time on, and we've seen that expansion. We've seen engagement grow, we've seen followership grow. And so organic social is the fastest way to grow a brand, the cheapest way to nurture a one-to-one relationship with your consumer. And so social media ranks quite high on our list of places to be: consistent, high quality, educational, and also engaging.
So listening to your customers, not just in customer support, but through the various social channels, is there an example of something that stands out, an insight that maybe made it from an Instagram post all the way through up to your design team, or some type of insight that led to a big shift internally?
Yeah, so I'll come back to this notion of using customer service insights to fuel multiple places within the brand. So when I came into the brand 4.5 years ago, I spoke with my entire team, and the thing that I heard over and over again was, if you think about your product assortment like a puzzle, there was a missing piece in the puzzle. And the missing piece in the puzzle was a stroller that you bought as a brand new parent, and you knew you were going to spend plus $1,000 on this item. Big investment, right? That's a big investment to be making. But you wanted the possibility to add on a second seat, because you were starting with one, but you really hoped to be a family of 2 children in the future. And you didn't want to rebuy or have to buy a double stroller. So the insight came from customer service and social media that we were missing a single to double stroller. This informed our product innovation team that is sitting in Amsterdam, and they designed, over the course of 3 years, the very first stroller that was made specifically for this North America customer that we were hearing call us every day. So customer service got on the phone, wired the insight to Amsterdam, where our product innovation team sits. Innovation team worked on it for years. This is another learning for me, coming from sneakers and strollers. The amount of time that our amazing innovation team spends on creating a stroller, it was like, wow, are we in the automobile industry? Like so long, because they wanted to have this level of precision and quality that was very high, up to 7 times higher than industry requirements. So they created the stroller, and then it came back around to North America, and then my go-to-market team deployed it, and we did that in a way that was collaborative, that spanned across every function. And it was this multifaceted plan that we launched last quarter, ended up surpassing all expectation. But I think that is the best example of, from start to finish, departments working very closely together to bring to life a product that our customer wanted.
That's, yeah, 3 years?
It took over 3 years, yes.
Very interesting. So when I think about Bugaboo, first of all, I used to use that analogy
Right.
when I would show off my Bugaboo. I was like, this thing drives like a BMW. It just feels good.
Yeah, it feels good. It's like butter. We're very proud of the one-hand push.
Oh, I didn't realize there was a
Yeah,
one-hand. Okay.
one-hand push.
I think about other luxury items, or even like a Temu or an away suitcase. That off-cycle communication that has to take place. Are there brands that you feel or you've experienced that are similar to a Bugaboo that just weren't doing it right? And where are they missing the mark when they're trying to build that long-term relationship for that kind of purchase?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. One aspect of my role that I spend a lot of time doing is lifting my head out of the sand and looking around and learning from what brands are doing really well and what they're not. And if you're doing something really well, you end up on the vision board in my office. So I can tell you who's on the vision board in my office, because that's actually where I draw the most inspiration from, even though I think it's good to take learnings in terms of what not to do and then draw on people who are leading. I think within the baby industry, I'll double click on Bobby. I think Bobby, if anyone here had a formula feeding journey, Bobby does a phenomenal job of having maybe one hero product. They only sell one product, and I don't think that they're constantly innovating their formula, but they operate like a media company. And the type of content they put out is extremely educational, it's cultural, it's of the moment, and I draw on a lot of experiences of how they're able to connect with parents today. And I'm constantly sending screenshots and links to my team of things that they're doing really well. But they've really inspired me in terms of not having a very large assortment at all, but being very much the center of conversation. Any new mom that you see sitting in Starbucks talking about her newborn knows about Bobby, even if she's using formula or not. So I think they've done a really good job of being relevant.
Does Bobby have their own machine as well?
I think, well, I've looked into this. They have almost like an editor-in-chief of who looks after all of the content that they produce. And I'm really inspired by them. And our team is not set up in the same way, but one thing that I try and push them on is consistency and quality. So consistently, how are we reaching our consumer? And I look at it from a number of different ways. I think you can start with internally, what are your product drops? So A, product drops. B, what is the consumer looking at? So Mother's Day, Father's Day, National Sibling Day, spring break, summer travel. These are all things that are already happening in our consumer's orbit. Okay, so enter the conversation here. And then you have this third pillar, which is what I have talked to you about, this customer service, which is how to, educational, did you know, top 3 things, that type of content that comes informed via what the consumer is saying and how we feed that in to our calendar. And then we deploy this in different ways. We deploy this through organic social, we deploy it through email, SMS, homepage.com content, paid ads, earned media. So it is then dispersed accordingly throughout the ecosystem.
Interesting. I think about some of the different data sets that are available out there now. So third-party data, all very familiar, something you would get like through your MarTech stack. Second-party data you would get through your partners or some type of co-op. First-party data, kind of the holy grail of the data that you own. And then the emergence of zero-party data and how zero-party data could actually influence and help brands like this to become even more innovative in the type of content that they're putting out. I've heard different stories of brands really leveraging it. So if you take like a Range Rover, they could actually see how frequently the trunk is opening, which will indicate that this is a busy parent with a family, and they're constantly getting the kids out for soccer practice. They start to infer these interesting tidbits. Or even like Bobby, I think we used to have it was basically like a Keurig for baby formula. And so the Internet of Things connection, that zero-party data of understanding when and the frequency that we're using the machine could also indicate what type of content you should be putting out. Because at that point, it's like, well, you normally wake up at 1 a.m., but it looks like you were up at 2 and you were up at 4. Maybe we're gonna suggest some sleep content for you to take on. So it's interesting how those things can help influence these off-cycle communications as well.
I think part of my challenges, I'll speak personally, is that there's so much data. There's so much data at our fingertips right now, and it's easy to be overwhelmed by that, especially when you operate with a really lean team. So Bugaboo is a huge brand, operating in 50 countries. My team is a small but mighty team that's 1, fully virtual, and 2, across the US and Canada. So we're dealing with different time zones and people in their home offices. And so I am a big fan of fewer things better, and deciding on this is the data that we're going to use to inform our plans. And so we use things like surveys, where if you come into bugaboo.com, you'll be invited to do a survey, or if you are on Facebook and you opt in, you will be served a survey. And this is a getting to know, what is your lifestyle? Are you a car family, or do you live in New York like I do and you don't have a car and you walk everywhere and you live in smaller living spaces, so you need a stroller that folds really neatly so it doesn't take too much of your apartment. All of that we gather in, and then we are then able to make informed decisions on how we push out comms to that consumer. But surveys do quite well for us when it comes to preference and consumer mindset, and the differences by region. Someone in Utah is going to be looking for something a little bit different than the Manhattan parent, for example.
For sure, no, definitely. Before we get short on time, I do want to hear more about these anthem moments. So I hear it's something that a term you use internally. I'd love to understand more about what that is.
Yeah, so I oftentimes challenge my team that if we are going to do something, we need to do something together, and there is no leaky energy. Because if you go into a store, if you go to Nordstrom here on Columbus Circle, if you go into that Nordstrom and it says one thing, but then when you are social media and you're on Bugaboo USA and that says another thing, that's not connective tissue. So how do we say the same things at the same time, especially when you are a growth brand and you're working with limited internal team resource at this point, which I think every company is dealing with, more limited budget. And so let's all say the same thing at the same time. So we call those anthem moments, opposed to just throwing pebbles into a lake and getting these little ripples. How do we throw one giant boulder once a month, for example, and be really loud about something? So even though we only have products drops happening twice a year, we have decided January is going to be the month about foot muffs because it's still really cold outside. February is going to be the month about our newborn strollers, because actually people are finding out that they're pregnant in February because they had holiday parties in December. And so this is the time to talk about newborn strollers. These are the kinds of things that we are talking about, right? In March, okay, people are traveling for spring break. So they're probably going to be looking for a travel stroller. So let's talk about travel stroller. So every month is themed, and that is the same throughout all of the channels. So that's what we call an anthem moment. And then you can orchestrate that in a very unified way. And then you can be more personal and tailored. What we say in SMS may be a little bit different in how we talk about it in social, but they're really going to be the same topic, maybe just told with different copy, different language, different assets. So it's not repetitive, but it all makes sense. So that's what we call anthem moments.
And Sex and the City, weren't you, that was somewhere the Bugaboo showed up, or like a Keith collab? Are those
Yeah.
kind of, how do those fit into the anthem moments?
Well, then that becomes the moment of the month.
Yeah.
When we have something internally planned, that's a good example of if we have a collab, then that becomes the key moment. And then from a media spend, from a resource spend, from a retail marketing spend, everything is saying the same thing. And now I'll go back on when I was in the sneaker industry. It was the same thing. It was the same thing then. You have your key campaign, and that's what you talk about. So there's no leaky energy. There's no disconnect from when you're going into retail and you're scrolling on social. It all makes sense. And so that's a page that I've taken from that playbook that works very well for us.
Perfect. So I got a couple rapid fire questions.
Okay, let's do it. I haven't seen these, so
Yeah.
if I say skip, it's because I don't. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you got to
Let's do
say something. So the favorite brand that nails off-cycle communication, you actually already mentioned Bobby. Is there another one that does come to mind?
I'm trying to think about now my own shopping habits. Who's always serving? You know who I think does a great job is the beauty industry. I think they do a phenomenal job of not having as many drops, but pushing out educational content. So I use too many beauty products to tell you my favorite one, but I think skincare and beauty is a good place
Yep.
a good page to take a look at. Summer Fridays, they do a great job. I like Summer Fridays.
All right, next one. If Bugaboo were a personality in a group chat, what kind of friend would it be? And I actually want to know what kind of friend you would be in a group chat as well, if you want to add that.
We need to be in more group chats together then you'll see. Let me think. The friend that drops information, probably, that drops, the friend that this is the tone that we try and take, right? Because, and I invite you again, all the parents in the room, think about that moment when you first discovered you were pregnant, and how incredibly exciting, elated, but then also very uncertain you feel. You have this huge responsibility, and you're moving into also, by the way, the most expensive chapter of your life, and you want to make very thoughtful considerations when you're choosing those products. And so when we do these these brand surveys twice a year, the number one thing that every parent wants in all 50 countries in which we operate is a safe stroller. Safety is the very first feature. It's not aesthetic, it's not drivability, it's safety. They want to know it's the safest one. So we have to come from a place of assurance and authority. Number one, it's a privilege to play this role in your next chapter. But number two, if you decide to choose a Bugaboo, we have our internal standards for durability and drivability are 7 times higher than industry requirements, number one. We have all these awards and accolades, from Forbes to Good Housekeeping to Red Dot Design. This is a trusted brand, right? And then 3, here's who's behind the brand. Here's our product team. Here's our leadership team. So we try and come from a place of you can trust us. And so, long way of saying, in the group chat, it would be the friend that knows a lot about what's happening.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, I want to thank you for joining me up here today.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think it was great to just speak about how the brands that do well aren't just the ones that are talking more frequently or louder. It's the ones that are more consistent and more human along the way.
Thank you. No, it was great being here, and thank you to all of you. It is no easy feat to show up in a room at 8 a.m. And so claps, especially if you've been consuming a lot of high quality content over the last day or so. But yes, we invite you to take, these are the takeaways. I believe they're on the big screen, but our hope is that you walk out of this room with some tactical ideas on how brands and also Optimove can nurture the in-between moments, how to work cross-functionally using your customer support. And if you don't have a customer support team, by the way, use social media. You can look at comments and engagements. That is a free and very rich place to mine data. And then consider no leaky energy. How do you create these anthem moments across channels? But thank you, Eddie.
Yeah, thanks, Jeanelle.
Thank you, all of you. Appreciate it.